Welcome to Adapted, the show where we discuss adaptations of various forms. My name is Tom, and with me is...
Ah,
The presentation speech for Selma Lagerlöf's award was actually not read by the chairman of the Swedish Nobel Prize Committee, our favorite Carl David af Weersen, but instead not the chairman, but instead the president of the Swedish Academy, another voting member, Claes Annerstedt. In his speech, he mentioned Sweden and that now Sweden could list itself amongst the great nations of literature, now that it had Lagerlöf as a
oh,
Nobel
how
Prize winner.
generous of them to
Yeah,
to extend that.
to themselves. They sure did. And Lagerlöf, of course, embodied idealism. The idealism beloved both inside and outside of Sweden. He said she is a painter of peasant life. So we have another Peasant Life Award. And these are things, obviously, if you've been listening to the show, it's something you expect from the Academy in the Nobel Prize in these early years. However, what's interesting is I believe this is the first presentation speech not actually delivered by Weersen himself. Apparently, the chairman had been blocking her nomination for years, and it was only by this year, by 1908, that he had been kind of overwhelmed by nominators. If you look at the nominating board, there's just a ton of them who come out for her, including Annerstedt, who gave the speech, the presentation speech. And apparently, for Weersen, Lagerlöf's style was too surrealistic and apparently lacked decorum, according to her critics. She didn't have decorum.
What does that mean? What do you know what they meant? What did they really mean by that? Like she's
some
not.
of her work involves topics more taboo than you would get from Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness.
Okay, I guess I haven't read them. I've read some of her other stuff, but mostly it's been like her. I've read her before this one, but I've read like her like fairy tales, so they're not that risque. But
There's one I've read, The Emperor of Portugalia, where eventually one of the characters becomes a prostitute.
okay,
It's not particularly scandalous, but the fact of the matter might have scared him off.
got it.
And there seemed to be this new idea that was coming along of we need a new social realism, that we need to get rid of this kind of folksy stuff, and that we had to get rid of this surrealistic and fairy tale stuff and embrace this new social realism. Lagerlöf, in her acceptance speech, so we finally get an acceptance speech from the person who wins the award, was pretty humble, had this kind of hypothetical conversation with her father she put forward. She didn't mention this kind of controversy at all. Lagerlöf herself was born in 1858. Her father was a landowner who turned to drink. The family went into struggle. She was educated later in life because her father didn't think she should be, being a woman. And she started her ethereal life while she was teaching high school by writing sonnets for opera singers at the Royal Opera, so these sonnets so they could sing there. Her first major work, which made her famous in her home country, was the Gosta Berling saga, which came out in 1889. That also was this kind of fairy tale style at a time when realism was on the rise. So this kind of tension in her work is always there, the tension between her and the critics. She continued to write modern fairy tales her entire life. And she also never married. However, she had affairs with women, starting in 1894. Her first, and it seems to be her major love, she met Sophie Elken, and they had an on-again, off-again affair through their life. Lagerlöf found this story, Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness, after she read about a Brittany folk legend about a man who drives a death cart, that man being whoever dies the last on New Year's Eve of that year. The next year, that person has to drive the death cart and pick up all the dead bodies. She read this book in 1904, but as mentioned earlier, there seemed to be a greater demand for kind of social activism, that type of literature, and I think she backshelved it for a while. Eventually, after winning the Nobel Prize, she was contacted by an organization that was trying to fight tuberculosis. This touched Lagerlof's heart since she had a sister who actually died of the disease. And what she did was she took the fairy tale she read, the Brittany fairy tale about the death driver, and adjusted it to deal with the social issue. So she put it out front for these people who are trying to fight tuberculosis. This seems to have kind of handled the problem of, well, we want a social activism type thing, but she likes fairy tales, so she gets to kind of combine them in this book. She apparently was eventually, using the money from this and the Nobel Prize Committee, able to purchase the estate her father lost from drinking and not generally not doing well in life. And she lived there until her
Was it a
death.
cherry orchard? This sounds very much like
Oh, I
it.
don't think it was. I think it's just a
It sounds
normal.
like the like. Then she bought the estate that she grew up on,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Well, we'll get to
we'll
check
do the
off in
cherry
our
orchard someday. Yeah.
anti-Nobel Prize time. But she died there in 1940.
It's worth noting we should just point out that she is the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Yes, she is.
She's not the
She's
first Nobel. She's not the first female laureate, but she's the first female laureate in literature. So
yes, yeah, yeah. Radiation had been.
yes, Marie Curie wins the first one, but
So yeah, she is the first one, which apparently also was a problem for Verson, according to Lagerlöf's niece. I believe it was her niece who said like that was a big bone he had to pick. He did not think women could embody the idealism of the land and all
I
this, all
love
this other
this guy has the weirdest take on literature.
He's so consistent though.
I
You
know, and
gotta
it's
give
just
it to
like
him. He's
I just think it like this guy must have been he was in this sort of backwoods of culture for the most part, and then he suddenly gets this opportunity to be like the god of 20th century literature. He must have just been like the things that he decided were important in these early days is just so bizarre.
it's interesting and it's odd because she doesn't exactly not fit into this category. Right? Like, I mean, I think she's better, and at least in the two novellas of hers I've read, than a lot of the people
She's better than most of them that
we
we've read. Yeah.
read. Yeah, but it's also she's not like categorically different from Bjornstern and Bjornson, right? I mean, she's covering a lot of the same topics. It,
She's covering a lot of the same topics, but I mean, she's just more interesting. I mean, her story is actually more interesting. I mean, Bjornson, his
oh
stories are just
yeah.
like
Mhm.
the man has a problem with anger, and he needs to deal with that. And it's like
Yeah.
the other one's like the father doesn't like him, so he goes to agricultural school for 5 years and then comes back and teaches them how to build dikes. Like, these stories are sort of absurdly dull. And they're, so the plots themselves aren't that interesting. And, their writing is fairly interesting in the sense that it sort of has that sparse, actually fairly unordained beauty that's kind of nice. But the Bjornson stories, and I mean, they're not that great. And Etchegaray is just terrible. And there some of these are just not 100%. Her stories, I think, are very interesting. She just is she's got an eye for a good story. So the ones I've read for, I remember I read The Christmas Rose she has, which is a story about like a bandit who lives in the woods, and there's this myth about the Christmas rose that will appear in a specific glen, and it will bloom into flowers on Christmas morning. That kind of stuff. So it's a fairy tale, but it's sort of this interesting, folksy kind of story. So she's got that. She's got a good eye, and this is a great story. This idea of the person who dies last in the year has to drive the death carriage for the next year is just a great concept for a story. She's certainly got an eye for that, and her writing in general just it is a little preachy. This one's a little preachy, especially when she goes off on sort of oddly long monologues about tuberculosis, which it's part of me is like even though tuberculosis isn't totally a thing anymore, even though the Gavin family keeps having a tendency to get tuberculosis. But um, my family has a tendency to get 19th century diseases like scarlet
Whooping
fever,
cough.
tuberculosis, and yeah, multiple episodes of whooping cough. The CDC follows us, but seriously, I don't know why we do this, but for the most part, tuberculosis isn't really much of a thing anymore. But even if it weren't, it's sort of a bit, I just find it a bit odd that they go off on this long diatribe against tuberculosis. I'm like, was anybody in favor of tuberculosis? Like, who, I guess the idea was we should have more sympathy for the poor who have this disease and really try to fight it and improve sanitary conditions. I think that's what it's trying to get at, probably. But it is just sort of comes across a little odd when you've got the man who drives the death carriage being like, "There is this disease. It is the worst disease that man has ever known." And he sort of is going, you're like, this is an odd monologue. So she does have a little bit of a preachy quality. But when she's not on that, she just spins a good yarn, and a sort of a beautiful yarn. When she's talking about these sort of dying characters, and it's touching. And even when they're sitting out in the graveyard, waiting for midnight to strike as they're all drinking away, she sets very good scenes. She has an eye for a plot, and she's got a good eye for turning a good phrase. So all of those put together make her a pretty solid writer compared to most of the others. Is she in the same category as, say, Rudyard Kipling? She's probably not quite the same, but she's way above the others. She's a really good.
I think she is above the other. I mean, Eshika Ray is a different story. I think she's a better writer than Bjornson, even though we're doing all this in translation. And God, I'm trying to even think. Certainly better
The
than
French dude, the
Frédéric
non.
Mistral, I think his name
Yeah,
is. We already forgot his name. Yeah, no, miles better than that. What I find so interesting about the controversy in the Academy, there seems to be a pretty big blow up, is that she's not categorically different. She's not writing on different topics necessarily.
no, that's true.
She's not working in a radically different
Sienkiewicz is writing in a
genre.
radically different
Sienkiewicz is
blend.
doing
Yeah,
something different. You
than
could
any
say
of them. Yeah,
Eshikare is kind of doing something
kind of, but I'd say it's
different. It's sort of like it's sort of the cosmopolitan version of the peasants fighting.
peasant thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say it's. I mean, it's the opposite, but
the
the opposite
same.
in the making it the same. Like
Yeah,
that's sort of like
Kipling is different. Kipling is really
Kipling is so
quite
culturally
wild.
different. What
Yeah,
he's writing is so culturally different that it comes across as being even though he is writing, Kim is about characters sort of in that sort of going along the Grand Trunk Road and sort of interacting with the salt of the earth kind of thing. But it comes across as so different than these other things that it just because of the way it's presented and the way he's discussing a culture that it does not come across the same as Bjornson or Bjornson
hmm
or Mistral.
yeah. There's a sense in Kipling of cosmopolitanism
Yeah,
and
I would agree with that. Yeah,
internationalism that I think is unique to Kipling.
Kipling. Yes, I would agree with
Yes,
that.
I mean you can make I mean maybe some of the same argument about Quid Vadis, but not really. That's a historical
Not really. I think
picture
Sienkiewicz,
book.
everything I've read by him is historical
Mhm.
epic. He's
Yeah,
he's writing these, and Quo Vadis has a strong religious sense, so does, to a certain extent, does with Fire and Sword. But they're grand epics, grand historical epics, battles and fights, and sweeping paths of history that sort of they're nowhere near these minutia of individuals dealing with their temper in a village.
yeah. Kim is zooming in on an interesting person who is not at the center of a major historical event.
Yeah,
Right. That's it. Like if you zoomed in on a slave of Petronius or something like that, not a central slave, but just somebody else, and followed that person around amidst the great game of Nero or something like that. That's what you
yeah,
would get. But
that's what you would be interesting. Yeah,
it's very different from Lagerlöf, who seems to be part of whatever this Nobel Prize thing is, whatever they thought of as really the ideal of a Nobel Prize, she seems to be part of, and yet she seems to be the first author we've stumbled upon who kicks up some dust about
yeah.
should she have won or not. And I don't know exactly know why, other than tastes are changing at this time. But the Nobel Prize Committee ain't exactly forward looking, I don't think. Not in
Not,
this not in this
no,
decade.
and it's not even as if you read Selma or Lagerlöf and would think, this is anticipating the great movements of 20th century literature. She's not in any sense, right? She's not doing any of that.
No, no, she's not.
S-
Certainly to less of an extent, if she's doing it at all, than somebody like Ibsen,
Yeah,
right? I mean, I don't see in a lot of work her really being that interested in social problems. This is the closest, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that
And
from
it's,
what I've read of her. And
mm,
again, even the social problem seems very tacked on. It's not like Ghosts.
mhm,
Ghosts is that is clearly about
mhm.
syphilis.
Yeah,
Like that
this is
is
the Ibsen play Ghosts we're talking
yeah,
about.
this is yeah, I guess just to clarify. Yeah, sorry. Ibsen's because you're talking about Ibsen's play Ghosts. That play is about syphilis and inherited syphilis and it's dealing with disease and how families handle it and this yeah, that is it is 100% a social problem dealing with the disease. This thing the consumption aspect is there, but it almost does feel like she was, to your point, saying, "Well, I kind of want to talk about this. Let me just have a monologue go and just kind of stick it in there." It doesn't feel like it belongs in that character's mouth. It doesn't feel like it belongs in the story. If you cut it, you would still have the same story. There would be very little would be lost if you just removed the references. You can still they can still have consumption. Characters can still die from consumption. You
And
do,
he can still use it as a weapon. That's another
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, he
If
can still because that's one of the things, we haven't really talked about the book, but the main sort of character, the one who ends up dying right at midnight and has to take over for what ends up being his old friend who had died the year before. And his old friend basically says, "I'm sorry, I kind of got you into this mess because I'm the one who introduced you to drink, but now you died, so now you have to take over for me as the death carriage." But the guy who is the new death carriage driver has been going around intentionally spreading his consumption to people, including trying to spread it to his children.
mhm.
So, there is a sense that it can still be a part of it, but that sort of becomes more he's a bad person,
It's
not
not a
necessarily the consumption itself is
yeah.
bad.
You can lift it out. And it just
Yeah.
seems like an excuse, right? That I have to write this thing for these people. And I suppose she was driven to do it because she lost her sister to it. So there is a sort of there's that element. And I can also imagine if people are going, you're kind of out of date. You really need to be talking about social problems. You really need to be talking about social problems. Eventually she goes, fine, fine, here you go. Here's a
Here's my
monologue.
social, yep,
Yep,
here's my
there you
thing.
go. You happy? We're good now? Um,
Yeah,
but
it has
regardless.
that feeling, and you could cut it completely. So it's not, but I guess that's the thing is like she's not her controversies seem mild, and it's not as if this isn't Virginia Woolf. This is not she's not an earth-shattering writer. She's a solid good
Mhm,
writer who has some really interesting things to say about the
mhm,
life in general, consumption aside.
mhm,
Her sort of the moral of the story, the sort of the old carriage driver who's sort of saying leading his friend through and being like, this is how you're going to be the new death driver. The old carriage driver has the line where he says, if I could tell people that they could make any prayer, the prayer they should say is, God, let my soul not be is it my let my soul not be reaped until it is
mhm.
prepared, or until it is
Yeah.
ripened, or matured, until it
Mhm,
is matured.
mhm,
Let my soul not be reaped until it is matured. And there is this sort of idea of people sometimes get die too early. They're not ready yet. And if they
mhm,
had the time, they might actually have matured into reasonable human beings. So that's a powerful notion running through the book that sort of does make an individual, even in a modern day, stop and think and read in a way that Bjornson and Etchegaray and Mistral and these other writers, they're whatever they're saying doesn't resonate. It's locked in a particular time period. It
mhm,
doesn't have a lot of resonance today. This does. There's a lot of ideas running through this story.
mhm.
It that even though it's a little bit of a Christmas Carol knockoff, but there's a lot running through the story that really does make you think about things. And I think that's a testament to the quality of the writing and the quality of the writer. Or the
Y-
quality of the writing and the quality of the writer.
Yes, and we should just give a brief plot description of this book. And it's so David Home is this man who has tuberculosis, and he had been watched over by Sister Edith at one point, and she and now is dying. She caught the tuberculosis from him and is dying, and she wants to see him one last time to restore him to his wife, and so on and so forth. David's wife had run off, but then she kind of convince them to come back together, at which point David tried to disease his children with the tuberculosis because he's a really bad man. He gets into a fight with some friends and he dies. The myth goes the last person to die in the year has to ride the death carriage and pick up all of the people's bodies who die in the following year. And so he meets George, a person he used to know who is now riding the death carriage, and introduces him to this. And he, sort of through this process, repents. He comes to find that his wife, in her misery, has decided to kill her children and herself, and then George lets him out of this condition somehow. Apparently, George can do this,
Well,
and
George agrees to take. George says, "I will take your place for a year," even though George is desperate because the thing they say is that it's supposed to be like a single day riding. The death carriage is painfully slow. It creaks along. It doesn't move very fast, but time will be lengthened between every person who dies so that he can go collect their spirit. So that every single day is like 100 years on Earth. And so, he's basically been riding this death carriage then for, I guess, the equivalent of 35,000 years that he's been riding this death carriage around, picking up every single person. And he says at the end, when David Holmes says, "I want to save my children. How do I save my children?" And then the other guy, what is his name? George, did you say?
George. Mhm.
George says, "Okay, I will send you back and I will take your place for the year," because he says he feels bad that he ruined David Holmes's life by introducing him to drink, I guess is the
Yes,
implication.
yeah, that's
So
the
he
idea.
agrees to basically say, "I will take your place for the year and I will send you back." So I guess he can do that if he agrees to take the person's place. So, that I guess is the sort of that's the Christmas Carol-y kind of aspect to it.
And one of the things you were pointing out the kind of a lot of the things you liked about it. One of the things I really liked too is this line about how he is returning people to their prison. George is returning
Yeah,
David to his prison, and there's this sense really that it's sort of torture to be on the death carriage. That it's just you will get to every dead body in that year, no matter how long it takes you. It's just it will take you as long as you need, and don't worry, time will slow down for you. And so it's just kind of horrible to be that person, right? That's when they're talking
yeah,
about the death carriage, they talk about David and his friends have this conversation right before he's killed, conveniently enough for us.
conveniently.
And so it's just this kind of like fate worse than death. And apparently people who know the fairy tale are particularly cautious right before midnight in order to not be the last person who dies. And yet when George sends David back or allows him to go back, it's kind of like, okay, back to your prison. And so there's this sort of sense of the the world itself, the material world or the spiritual world both have a sort of torturous element to them, that neither of them are really necessarily redemptive or necessarily hellish, even though we don't really see a nice spiritual world.
Well,
That
there's a strong implication that there is, though. When Sister Edith dies, they say like they see all these lights and fair, this kind of stuff, and they say, "Oh, the people that we need to leave now because they don't take her in the death carriage." They say the people that she will go with, they're coming to collect her now. We shouldn't see them. We shouldn't be here. That's for them. So there is this implication that sort of like the heavenly spirits are coming to collect her, so she gets to go to some sort of paradise. Everybody else just gets thrown in the back of the death carriage and I
gets
guess
taken
don't
somewhere.
taken somewhere.
We don't
We don't know.
know. Yeah, but I mean, I like that element
It
of
is, yeah.
a
It's
sort
a
of like
very
twin. It's sort of Manichaean.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's very Manichaean,
It's very
but
Manichaean. There's no the evil and the good are both present fully in the material and in the spiritual. And you sort of also get a division between this is more in the book than in the film, a division between the wife of David and Sister Edith. And they both have a love for David that is very, very rich, but also very different. The Sister Edith love feels very close to a physical attraction, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be that she's drawn, and they say this, she's drawn to his spirit. There's something about his spirit or the redemption of his spirit that she's drawn to. That's a sort of pairing she has. Well, with his wife, it isn't that quality of love. Um, and yet it doesn't seem as if one is preferred over the other, even though Sister Edith is more interesting than the wife character. But it's just something that is there. And it kind of goes into this, or it feeds into this idea of the spiritual and the material as being, you know, this dichotomy between those things. So those, I like those elements of the book. It isn't, it's Christian, but it isn't particularly engaging with any kind
It's
of
not in any way engaging with any Christian theology
Christianity.
or
It's
Christianity in any way. I mean, it's even David says at one point, he says, like, whom do I pray to? Like, do I pray to God? Do I pray to Jesus? Do I pray to you?
Mhm.
Like to the Lord of Death, who I guess
Mhm.
is you. You know, he basically says like, oh, where do I go? Like, which one will do something for me here? So there is this sense of, yeah, it's a Christian world view, but in no way does it inform it other than just the names.
Well, I think there's this kind of idea of meekness and sobriety and things like that that are
True, true.
Christian in their ethics, but they're not Christian in their metaphysics.
Yeah.
It's odd because it's a book about a metaphysical reality that's enforcing almost I don't want to say scolding, but it's enforcing a Christian idea of behavior and treatment of others, but and it has Christian characters. It has
Yeah.
sisters in them.
Sister, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Sister
She's
Edith
a
and Sister
Salvation Army.
Mary.
Yeah,
She's
she's a Salvation Army,
figure.
slum sister. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yet the metaphysics aren't Christian. The metaphysics are they're closer to Greek, right? I mean, you have
Yeah.
a kind of version of Sharon in George shaking people around. And I thought that mixture was also very compelling. That this is a sort of I'm going to take from this kind of pagan thought and I'm going to take from Christian thought
That's
and
very
ethics
Dante,
and
and though Dante obviously does that too.
yeah.
It's sort of a
Yeah, he takes that, but Dante's doing it to inform
he's doing something
both
different, right?
a Christian ethics and a Christian. I mean, his metaphysical realm is
Yeah, but that's I was gonna say,
entirely
but I just meant the
Christian.
idea of taking a Greek sort of
Oh, I
mindset and
see.
kind of
Mhm.
and tacking it into a Christian worldview. I mean, Greek has he's got the river Styx, and that's part of hell, and he's taking a lot of that mindset. But I would absolutely agree that yeah, the sort of metaphysics, the way the world works, is very pagan. There's no sense here of the ethics are Christian. The way the world works and the afterworld works doesn't have a lot of that though.
Mhm. Yeah, and it gives it a really odd macabre space,
Yeah.
right? And there really is a hard sense of redemption. I don't know what redemption means in this world. I know that David gets loving towards the end, and I know that's good, and we want that. But I don't get the sense this is a cured world, but that this is a kind of fundamentally broken world that is that occasionally good things can come out of it, or you can work well within this world. Should we transition into the film?
Yes.
Let's talk about the little film. So this is Victor Somstrom, who later would go on to Hollywood, and he was a big-time director in Sweden. This is came out in 1921, so this is Sweden's golden age. This is right before the Germans kind of took over everything, and he was a big deal. And she had never, Selma had never given her rights to any of her works to anyone. And apparently, Somstrom wrote the initial draft of this, went to her and read it and acted the whole thing out. And apparently, this convinced her.
He's the guy who plays the
David, yeah,
David. Yeah, he plays David
yeah,
Holm too.
he wrote it, he directed, he starred in it. This and his performance in Wild Strawberries, Ingmar Bergman's Wild Strawberries, are his two big famous performances. So, as an actor, he's kind of known for these films, but as a director, he was probably Sweden's first great filmmaker. And he also then went on to America and kind of dominated the American film scene in its early years. But apparently she saw this. She saw his version of an Ibsen poem. He had adapted an Ibsen poem into a film. And that's when she finally agreed to sell the rights to this book. And this seems to be the first movie that was made from her work. And she was involved in it. She had notes for his script. She changed a bit of the what do you call it, the jump between timelines. She wanted to simplify that, and so apparently it jumped back and forth a lot more. In this, I think it only does it twice, and so that was kind of part of her contribution. It was also kind of famous for having very little expository intertitles. This is a movie that has 132 intertitles. Nine of them are expository. So all you're reading is mostly
Mostly
dialogue.
dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, which was a big deal at the time. That's not how things were done. Even other things were different, like not introducing the characters. Typically in Swedish silent films, you would have a shot of the character. We saw this with
Yeah.
what's it
That was
called?
great.
Uh,
That was in Ein Glad Gut.
Bjornson's,
Was that? Oh no, it wasn't Ein
not
Glad
Ein
Gut. It was
Gut,
the other one we did.
Sinvi, right?
Yeah, whatever her name was. Yeah,
Her
the
name was,
character, whatever her name was.
yeah,
Yeah.
where you'd introduce, he got rid of this, and he also used kind of close-ups in order to get at characters and to focus in on what a character was doing. And so he started to do a lot of these kind of modern techniques, narrative techniques, in order to make his film run. He also did night shooting. Usually, when things were shot at night, you would light it for night. Now he
Yeah, you put the
actually,
blue. Yeah, you just put a blue tint
Mhm.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, now he
You can see
actually
that if you see like
shot at night.
Nosferatu. I always love Nosferatu when they show like the nighttime scenes and they're like supposed to be running through. I'm like, it's clearly day. You can
Yes,
see the
when
shadows.
he's
Like,
carrying the coffin to his
yeah.
house in London, it's like, yeah, that's I can see the sun,
I can
but
see the sun. I can see the shadows from the sun. It's clearly dead. I mean, I understand the technical constraint that was involved, so you just suspend your disbelief on it. But I always find that funny.
yeah, but no, this is actually shot at night, so he could use candlelight to light things and have it pop out. Um, and yeah, and a few things, he kind of simplified the Sister Edith story a bit. It's more about Holmes and his wife. He cast a very famous at the time, and I don't know anymore, but at the time, a very famous actress to play his wife, and who was, I think 38 at the time of shooting. She was, and she looks about 20 years older than that. Um,
She does look quite a bit older.
yeah.
They did something to her.
hmm Uses a lot of double exposure, which became this movie became very famous for that. Which is how you got the ghost scenes. Is he would film the non-ghost scenes, then he would use that same footage and then film the ghost scenes on the same film that he was then shooting the ghost scenes, giving the carriage and the ghosts the sort of ghostly effect, which was very famous at the time. That was a big innovation, and a bit of a apparently critical controversy. Andre Bazin, the critic, basically said this movie was double exposure was just a sort of spectacle, like a stunt, in order to attract attention, and it sounded a lot of bit. The conversation sounded a lot like contemporary people arguing about CGI. Like, is this really filmmaking or is this just a
I was gonna say, or like
stunt?
3D. He would have
Yeah,
hated Avatar.
yeah. Oh
Yeah, he would have
God,
hated
yeah.
Avatar or any of those like Airbender 3D movies. Yeah, like those things.
Yeah. So that was
This is not a new. So basically, that all of those controversies are not new controversies by any stretch of the imagination. Apparently,
no, I think cinema itself was just thought of as a big special effect that isn't actually a serious thing. But anyway, um, this movie is really loved and really well regarded, and I think for a good reason. We did this on our other show, Talking Pictures Trivia, and we everyone on that show, many of whom are not silent film people necessarily, absolutely love this movie. It's a movie I would show people to introduce them to silent film.
yeah. I mean, if there's a debate, yeah, if there's a debate on whether Selma Lagerlöf is sort of is a great writer, whether the Phantom Carriage, the book or whatever, what is the actual name of the book?
Thy soul shall bear
Thy
witness.
soul shall bear witness, which even the copy I have just translates it as Phantom Carriage. And the guy who does the translation just said, "Yeah, I'm just doing this because no one knows the other one. I'm just giving it the name of the silent movie because people know that." You could have a reasonable debate. Is she great? Is she really good? What makes her great, etc., etc. This movie, I hadn't seen it before. This movie is phenomenal. Like this movie is really, really good. There is no doubt in my mind this is one of the best movies ever made, and certainly one of the best silent movies ever made. It's phenomenal. This is the first of all the things, books, movies we've done this season. This is the first, like, this one stands out. This is a great, great piece of art, a great thing that they made. It's phenomenal. It's really, really good. No doubt.
It's intimate, it's very clear, and it's beautiful looking too.
It's beautiful. It's stunning. It's got to be the best use of lighting I think I've ever seen in a silent movie. And maybe that is because he was trying to film it during different times of day. But it's like the way that it's almost got there's light sources often in the background, like through windows that he'll do, and just sort of in other rooms, and you sort of have like shadows coming through, and the way the lighting works in the scenes is really beautiful. Some of the outdoor scenes in the cities with lampposts and just it has this like Edward Hopper feel to it. They're really you just kind of see this and go, wow, this has got to be one of the best silent movies ever made. I mean, well, we can talk about whether you can make this as a talking movie, but just the way that this thing is filmed and the double exposure thing, some of those shots, you kind of, you think it's going to be gimmicky. It works. Like, it works really well. It's really a stunning, stunning movie.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And the performances are
Yep.
completely modern, right? They're
hmm
not silent filmy at all. I don't think anyone really is, except maybe some of his drinking buddies.
Some
Um,
of the drink buddies, the wife sometimes has a little bit of these sort of like,
yeah,
then she kind of like walks towards the camera with the wobbly eyes. It's got a little bit of that, but it's not distracting. And even when the sister Edith is in the bed, she does a little bit of the like sitting up with the sort of jerky hand motions, but not in a distracting way. Like it's a very modern film. There is a strong sense that these performances could be if you just filmed them with modern film, the performances wouldn't feel out of place. They certainly have a strong modern feel to them. I don't know if you know this, is the Shining, is that in it? Did they steal that from this movie?
that's what I think,
They
right?
have to have. The Shining scene where Jack is, with the axe and he smashes down the door. I thought the exact, it almost feels like not quite a shot for shot for it, but it feels like they have to have been paying homage to this movie.
Yeah, I think so. So there's a scene, it's not from the book, but a scene where she locks David in a room and he's coughing in his children's face with consumption. And so for some reason he has an axe in the room and he starts breaking down the door to get at her. And it looks a lot like Jack
He even
Nicholson from
sticks
The
his head
Shining.
through the door at one point.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just it's.
It apparently that scene was an homage to Broken Blossoms,
Well, I
where
was also wondering. Well,
yeah,
then I thought, well, I guess it's kind of Broken Blossomy though. So maybe it's but Broken Blossoms has sort of the more not quite terror, but it's much more intimate. There's sort of less of that. It feels less campy. Not campy isn't quite the right word, but I just feel like the one for one relationship between the the Shining and this, it feels like a one for one. Whereas, I've never got that impression with the Broken Blossoms scene. I could definitely see this being an homage to Broken Blossoms, and then this one being almost a direct one for one, not rip off, but just pulling it and doing an almost screen for screen shot of the Shining scene.
yeah, it looks a
Uh,
lot like The Shining scene. That's exactly what I thought
okay, I
when
didn't
you
know
get
if
that
you knew
shot
whether or
right
not. I
on the
was
door.
curious. I'm
Mm,
assuming someone, whether they know it or not, someone must have. It
I've
seems
said
too
this. Yeah,
obvious. Someone
yeah.
must have said this by now. But it's one of these, which again in my head I'm like, it's fascinating because basically the same amount of time has passed between that movie and The Shining as has passed between The Shining and now. So this is I mean, The Shining making an homage to this movie would be like somebody today making an homage of The Shining.
Which they do, I'm sure.
Which I know, and it's the same time period. Like but it feels like the difference between this and The Shining feels like 100 years, whereas the difference between The Shining and today, I don't know, in my head feels like 20 years. It doesn't feel like it's that old, but the difference, it feels like significant. That's partially technological, but the point is, yeah, the performances that performance feels like you could rip it out and put it in The Shining today, and it would feel more or less the same.
Yeah, I
You
actually like it more than Jack
It's better
Nicholson.
than, but I just mean, but the quality of the performance, it has a modern feel to it.
Mhm. Yeah,
I agree. I think that I'm not a big fan of The Shining, although I do like a couple scenes in it. But this feels much. The performance feels modern. A lot of them do. When he's, some of his crying scenes and just sort of his upset scenes, and even just like when he's like got the invisible bonds on the ground and he's trying to get himself untied from his invisible bonds, like they feel very, very modern. They don't have this feeling of this sort of herky jerky, staring weepy-eyed at the camera, spinning around in a circle in the closet thing. Like they don't have that Lillian Gish feel. And so the performances work very well, and they are kind of moving. They're sad. There is sort of a truly empathetic feel for these characters that you kind of that it elicits.
yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, I would say his performance here is, I think, the best I've seen in a silent film.
Yes, I would agree with.
Yeah,
I could get on board with that.
yeah, it's just a complete. It's there's no kind of false note in it. There's no overperformance, and he is just this good kind of staring face. He's a good listener. I think that's what it is. He kind of
Yeah.
absorbs the atmosphere around him. He can listen. That's what silent film actors just don't do that really. They tend to be much more interested in economy of gesture than they are in a sort of more, I don't know, method absorption of what's going on, and he's much better at the latter.
It's like even his scene when there's one scene when Sister Edith first meets him and again, I don't even know how many silent films do flashbacks like that.
No, I don't
Can't
know.
think of many.
Hmm.
Right, you can't think of many. It has a fairly complex narrative structure. There's a flashback within a flashback at one point. You don't usually get that level of, and I know you said I didn't know this, but Selma Lagerlöf tried to simplify it more, and maybe you did need to, but it does have a very complex narrative feel to it. But there's one scene in a flashback where they first meet, and Sister Edith is with her friend, and they've just opened the Salvation Army home, and it's New Year. Is it New Year's Eve? Actually, I guess it's not. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think it is New Year's Eve.
Hmm.
Um, and they're saying, oh, this is, we're waiting for our first, sort of person to come and first guest. And David Holm walks in and he's drunk and they offer him food and he basically says, I don't want your food. I want a place to pass out. And he throws all his clothes on the floor and he passes out in the bed. And she goes and gets his coat and says, I'm going to patch up his coat because it's all torn. And the woman who's with her says, no, 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 you shouldn't do that because we don't know what diseases could be in it. And if we need to sterilize it first, but we can't do that yet. So you shouldn't do that. And she says, no, I want to patch his cloak. So she does. And that's supposedly where she gets the consumption because she sits over his cloak all night patching it. And the next morning, David wakes up and he finds his coat has been patched, and this is in the book too. And he basically says, "Can you get the person who patched this for me?" And she goes to him, and he just sort of in this again. This is such a human thing to do that just a lot of writers don't have the courage to do it, or they wouldn't think of it. And he just basically says, he just takes the coat and in front of her just rips all the patches out and says, "You wasted your time. You shouldn't have done that. I liked my coat the way it was," and just throws all the patches on the floor and kind of laughs at her and walks out. And that's a sign of a great writer. It's just that sort of brutally cruel thing to do. You know it because we see it that she's so proud of it and he can see it, and yet he's the way he even just sort of like you're right. He doesn't feel the need to do these sort of big eye roly things and kind of stare as she's saying, yes, I did it and this kind of stuff. And even just his tearing of the jacket is sort of these small gestures, but it's obvious just the absolute cruelty involved in it. It's a really great scene, and it's extremely well acted. And you can see if you did this with a lesser actor or a lesser director, because it's the same person, how that scene could be done in that sort of over the top sort of you can hear the soundtrack going behind it being like the silent filmy kind of thing, and they don't even do that. It's just it has just the cruelty speaks for itself, and it's a brilliantly directed scene, and it's a really well acted scene. It's just like he does a lot of them like that. They're really great, really solid performances.
Yeah, it's not manic, it's deliberate.
Yeah,
He just very carefully rips, finds, and takes out all of the improvements. Um, I do like the line, I liked it better like
yeah, I liked
that.
it better. I liked it better. It's just
Yeah.
like such a bitter, cruel thing to say.
Yeah. Uh, and no, it is an excellent, excellent movie, and I would recommend this to anyone who wants to get into silent films. I'm
Yes.
thinking I'm teaching a class in silent and not in silent films and films next semester. I'm thinking of making this the silent film.
If you're gonna do a silent film, it's probably like this or like Cabinet are sort of like
Yeah,
Cabinet's kind of a little weirder. This one's just like I don't think anyone would have a problem
yeah,
watching this.
no, yeah. I think it'd probably be better than Birth of a Nation.
I couldn't do that. Or even Broken Blossoms. Let's get to
Yeah,
that.
there's
There are
a good way to get in
problems.
trouble. Yeah.
Those are problems. They're great. They're good films, but they're
But
problems.
mhm.
This movie just has none of those. And even, I mean, I really like Nosferatu, but it's definitely a weird, it's a somewhat slow, and sometimes it does, again, it doesn't have a truly modern feel. Um, some of the scenes just feel a little strange, and there's a little bit of kind of jerkiness and jumpiness to it. It has, I'm not trying to knock Nosferatu. That's one of the best silent films as well. But or even Sunrise. Like Sunrise is also a really wonderful film, but for different reasons. This is the one if yeah, I think if you're going to get someone into silent films, this is the movie to go with.
Yeah, they
This,
stop using montage style here. I think that's a big
yeah,
difference. Nosferatu does it, like with the death scenes where everybody's suddenly dying in London.
that's a
And
really good, yeah, it's a really good point. I was even thinking the sailing scene where they sort
yeah,
of have like, that's a bit montagey, like,
mhm.
but that's a great observation. There's no montages here.
There's no, it is, and that's I think we don't do that anymore. And I think it starts with movies like this where you don't have to. You can kind of tell a story not unlike how you would tell it on stage, and that adaptation is fine. You don't need to like juxtapose images in order to communicate a feeling. The feeling can come out of the circumstances and the performers.
Yeah.
It's a simpler way of doing things on the surface, but it's actually probably
Yeah, I was
far
gonna
more
say,
subtle
yeah,
in
it's
its
simpler on the surface, but you have
shaping.
to really be good at it. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier just to go and just, this is the problem with like Kim, the
Mhm.
movie. Kim, the movie is like it's really hard to layer on some of these things. It's much easier just to say like have a voiceover be like Kim loved the llama. And you're like, oh,
Or
he
it
did? Why? I think it's much easier to do that, and just the audience is supposed to go, oh, okay, I guess Kim loves the llama. It's easier to do that, but it's not very effective. Whereas it doesn't really do that at all. Very little. To your point, I can't even think of any expository title characters. There definitely must have been some. I think there was one where the one I can remember is where it's like not only when Sister Edith is dying, it's like, and as Sister Edith died, this was an unusual night. It was also New Year's Eve. That's the only one I can think of. Now that must have. Oh, I guess there's another one I can think of is when they're in prison and they're like, and the warden had something to show him that, he thought would scare him, and it's that his brother is also in prison for murder. And so I guess there's a few, but they're very few and far between.
yeah, there's that sort of stuff. I looked this up. I didn't count, but
Yeah.
apparently it was nine expository titles against 129 dialogue. So it is not interested in spelling things out. It's not interested. And it's also exposition is easy. What I think is also easy in a different way is just putting doing things in kind of a surreal or creepy way, or being really really experimental, and taking the new technology to the tilt, like the Napoleon movie, that 5 or 7 hour silent Napoleon movie where they had, like three scenes put together and they're each in one scene and they're on the same screen, and one is blue and one is white and one is red, and it's things like that where it's
Just
like,
like the never-ending story.
yeah, you could.
I
Oh God, I don't think I saw that movie.
haven't seen the movie, but I know the book.
Oh, okay. I haven't read the book, but you can do experiments that seem deep, but are actually just you're just kind of throwing things at the wall, and
Yeah.
this requires a lot of real care, right? And so you can follow the narrative pretty easily. And as you're saying, there's a flashback in a flashback at one point, and you get it all. You get it's fine. It
It's not
works
hard
really
to
well.
follow it. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no sense of losing the audience. Even what I like that they do, and again, it might be a little easier if you actually know Swedish, but a number of times they don't even bother to put title cards. Um, when it's fairly obvious what they're saying, or when it's not necessarily important to what they're saying, we can get the gist of it from the what they're doing, and they're like, well, we're not going to interrupt this. You've got it. Which again, there's a level of confidence in the director to do that in a silent film. Yeah, watch this movie. Audiences, watch it. Like you can easily get it. It's on YouTube. Go, just watch it.
On
It's
Criterion,
really.
it's yeah.
Oh, did I watch an illegal copy?
I don't think it's illegal.
Okay.
I
I was
think
like,
it
oh
is
shoot,
it's over 100 years old. I think it's
I guess that's true because I guess yeah, because I was like I didn't know it was on Criterion, but yeah, Criterion, YouTube. This one's good. This is just worth it. This might even be one of the best movies we've done in this whole
yeah, and adapt it.
yeah, and adapt it. This might be the best. I can't think. I mean, we've done some pretty darn good movies. I guess we'd like Trial. There's been some really good movies.
Trial was good. Casablanca is gonna
Casablanca's really good. There are some like the All Quiet's really good. The It Happened One Night. Like there are, we've done a few really really good ones.
this
This
is
one's
up
up
there
there.
though. Yeah.
This is way up there. It's really good.
If you enjoyed this adaptation of Selma Lagerlöf, please enjoy The Adventures of Niels Horgesson from 1962 and another one from 2011. The Saga of Gosta Berling from 1924. The Enchanted Boy from 1955, Sir Arne's Treasure from 1919, what the hell else? The Blizzard from 1923, Sons of Igmar from 1919, and Jerusalem from 1996. You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found. Join us next week when we discuss Paul von Hesse's work L'Arbiate and the film version of his play Kolberg, which was a German play that later became converted into a Nazi propaganda film. So we're all very excited about that here on Adapted.
I think that's this. Yeah, oh yeah. Looking forward
Yeah.
to this one.
Yeah, we are not reading the original play Kolberg because no one has
Because I
translated
can't
it.
find it. I've looked everywhere. Talk about it next week.
Yeah, we will talk about it next week. We should say before we go, are we putting this in our Western canon?
The book, probably not the movie. Yeah,
Yeah, I would say
the
so.
movie 100%.
Hmm.
Not a question on the movie.
Absolutely. All right, now that it's in, we will see you next week with these works. See you then.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Next week, we'll be discussing the 1910 Nobel Prize winner Paul Hisse and his short fiction, including L'Arrabbiata, Midday Magic, Count Ernest's Home, and anything else we can think of.
I didn't read Count Ernest's Home. We should be
Oh,
clear. I didn't know that one was on the list.
oh well,
Oops.
I have no reason to discuss it. I didn't like it very much, but
All right.
anyway,
Well,
so we'll just skip that. So audience, don't look forward to that. It probably won't happen. But if we had to look at, I think El Arabiata was
yeah.
one we both read. It's also his most famous work. I think it's the Furious one it translates to. So with that in mind, Pat, who would you hire to direct this work?
For Kohlberg, I would hire Clint Eastwood.
Oh, for Kohlberg. Okay.
Yeah, for Kohlberg, right?
I was saying El Arabiata, but
Oh, I
sure,
thought we
sure,
were doing
sure. You
Kohlberg.
could do whatever you want. I
Okay,
think
I'm gonna do
Kohlberg's great.
Kohlberg.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna do Kohlberg. I would get Clint Eastwood to direct it. It's got a very angry old man. It's got lots of drama.
Uh-huh.
It feels like a good one for. It's basically got the Mexican standoff kind of quality there. I think
Oh,
this would be a good.
yeah.
I think it's like a legit good one for Clint Eastwood
It
to
would
do.
be a good Western.
Yeah,
Actually, that
this
would
is
be a
like
really good Western. Oh, who's the Western guy? The spaghetti Western guy.
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, well, he's in them, but who's the director? Um,
I have no idea. I don't think so I was like when I was going through the list, like there's they did the like AFI American Film Institute did their like top 10 lists of everything. And I think I went through the list and I'd seen many of the ones on there. I had not seen a single one of the Westerns.
uh,
So my knowledge of Western films is incredibly small.
Sergio Leone.
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, Sergio Leone. He was the one who kind of made Eastwood a star with his westerns, like The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. Yeah, that would be really fun.
I think
A
you could get a legit,
Western
really
Kohlberg.
good. Yeah, I think you get a if you just had Clint Eastwood be a little Europeanized, you could do a you could do a solid version of
Yeah.
it.
He does speak Italian. Clint Eastwood
Oh,
does
really?
speak Italian. Yeah, I think it's from doing Italian movies.
Must be hilarious,
Yeah, I
but
think all of his western, like, well, not all of his westerns, but I think the westerns he became famous for in the '70s were all filmed in Italy. So it's
oh,
the fascist connection is deeper than we realized.
all right. What about you? Who would you get?
So I did El Arrabbiata, and I thought either Renoir or Rene Clair. So those are
I
French.
know Renoir. I don't know Rene Clair.
He was a French director who did The Crimes of Monsieur Lang, and it was part. They were both part of the same movement. It was this like poetic realism movement where you saw a sort of very I don't know how to say it other than romanticized version of like people about in the world. It's very heightened. You could see how like somebody like Tennessee Williams would be downstream of something like
Yeah.
this, even though it's less crude, I would say, than Tennessee Williams. I don't think.
Doesn't Renoir do the one about the guy who sleeps with his aunt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Renoir moves on from this,
Yeah.
and Renoir is also a little different because he kind of breaks the bounds a little bit.
Okay. I'm like
Yeah,
that seems pretty pretty
yeah. It's
risque.
he sleeps with his aunt. Is it? No, I don't think he sleeps with his aunt.
Sleep with his aunt?
Is it? What movie are we thinking of?
I don't remember. I just remember
Um,
seeing it like, oh gosh, 20 years ago.
Anyhow, yeah, I think that would be fun for that. I love the idea of Kohlberg as a Western. I could just hear the soundtrack right now.
I mean, like someone should just do that. Just make it a modern Western. Just go for it.
Well, if you think about like the invaders going to the small town and the small town has to defend itself,
He is very Western.
that's been done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this
Guess that's
is
just Tombstone.
yeah, basically. Yeah.
Basically,
Kohlberg is Tombstone with nationalism
yeah,
sewn in.
with a little bit of Nazis, and then
Yeah.
we've got Goldberg.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody needs to make a Nazi Western. That's what we need for our future.
Uh, who knows?
Oh, this podcast is going off the rails.